that the statistics around sexual offences, as in the case with other categories of crime, are subject to questions of accuracy and reliability. The extent of gender-based violence and femicide is a national crisis, they say. So we go back to that conversation. We speak now to the Gender Commission chairperson, and she joins us on Skype. She is Tamara Mathebula. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Mathebula.
Thank you for having me.
So we're talking to Total Shutdown about this very issue earlier on, and I was wondering if the Gender Commission can just share with us the statistics. What are you hearing of the latest figures on GBV and femicide?
Yes, absolutely. I think GBV and femicide are actually on the increase. They're not abating despite so many interventions by government, by civil society organizations, and by private sector. So currently, you will find that every 6 minutes, a woman is sexually abused or abused either by a partner or intimate partner. And what is even alarming these days is that it's not just about numbers of people that are actually abused, but it's the killing of women that is actually happening these days. Not only women, but also children. So I think we are at a state where we've been collecting information from the South African police, but what worries more is that a lot of women who are abused on a daily basis and every second and hour are people who do not come forward to report. So we are worried that the statistics are telling us something, but at the same time, we do acknowledge the fact that there is quite a lot of unreported cases out there.
What are you finding as the main causes, the main drivers of this?
Yes, so I think we can attribute all of this to quite a number of things. I think for me, substance abuse is one of them, because you will find that if a partner goes to a drinking spree and comes back home and there's no food on the table, the next thing is abuse. And again, I think there's a lot of anger amongst male counterparts as well as partners out there. Anger, perhaps frustrations from work, frustrations, from quite a number of things. And people would come and actually decide that the nearest person or the nearest prey would be my partner or would be the woman. And secondly, I think when we look at statistics in terms of child trafficking, human trafficking, abuse, and other things that are happening with minor crimes, we are actually worried that, it's actually the people that are working as syndicates who are actually even targeting, headed house homes or women-headed house homes. Where they know that there are no women, there are no men in those households. And we have seen quite a number of things happening in the Eastern Cape, for an example, where older women who stay with children are actually the targets of these abuses and the killings that we see.
I mean, we've also seen that between 2017 to 2018, and even in this year's crime statistics, contact crimes have gone up. So I'd imagine that gender-based violence incidents would have increased as well. Are there enough mechanisms in place, especially from a law enforcement perspective? We've heard of many women who say they have requested, paperwork from police to prevent the perpetrator from being anywhere in their space, and yet they continue to do that. They defy those papers. So what is being done?
Yes, I think you're quite right to say, is there enough that's done by law enforcement agencies? I think, first of all, we've, as the Gender Commission, we have done our own investigations, and we have looked at how the police system is working in South Africa for gender-based violence and crime-related cases. And what we have found was that in many instances, police themselves are not properly trained to handle these. And even the way they categorize the gender-based violence and domestic violence cases, that they are actually prioritized as crimes or under criminal cases, not specifically defined as gender-based violence, and hence the different treatment. And we have also looked at how the cases progress to the courts. And we feel that, there isn't much that is done in terms of, one, protecting the woman. The police would give the woman who has been abused the protection order, to take the protection order and give it to the perpetrator. And that actually predisposes a woman to more abuse and or killing at some point. And we also realize that within SABC, there aren't enough kits, with DNA kits that are supposed to test women, the DNA from the perpetrator, so that becomes when the woman goes to court, that becomes the evidence that is usually needed. And then crossing over to, the justice system itself. Many judges or many people who reside over a case sometimes are not properly trained to handle these cases sensitively. And even in courts, you will find that more and more women suffer secondary victimizations from the way the question is done, to the way, the cases are sometimes thrown out of court just because there isn't enough evidence. If I can just make an example very quickly. If you look at the Omotoso case, for an example, the young woman was actually asked a very derogatory questions, and she's supposed to answer as to, how far, how many centimeters, things like that. And these are sometimes things that usually make women lose cases in courts, because of such questioning, because of how they suffer secondary victimization, and even the way these cases drag. They drag up until they are actually thrown out of court. So there isn't much that has been done, but I think what government has done so far, there has been a request from SABC for training on gender sensitization training, and CGE will do that. And we also see government launching quite a number of dedicated courts that will handle these cases with a multidisciplinary team that has been trained.
Commissioner, just a final question. You yourselves have said that South Africa has 5 times the global average when it comes to femicide. Very, very briefly, what do we need to improve to stem this?
What we need to improve is how we coordinate our efforts as South Africa, efforts between government departments, for an example, justice, as well as South African police services. We need to step up efforts that are actually trying to speed up how the cases go to conviction. We need to make sure that we support women even in court in terms of handling the cases for women as well as children who are abused in the process. But also what we need to do is to really make sure that our laws and legislations are enforced in South Africa, because it's one thing to have a law and a legislation, but enforcement of those legislations is quite key.
Thank you so much for joining us, Commission for Gender Equality Chair Tamara Mathebula.